March 26, 1986, a civil case for alleged human rights violations was filed against President Marcos in Honolulu. This was Jose Maria Sison versus Marcos. Soon thereafter, three other independent civil actions were filed. The plaintiffs alleged that their human rights were violated in the Philippines by the Philippine military or paramilitary during the martial law period. All the alleged violations were situated in the Philippines. Reported by Filipinos against Filipinos in violation of Philippine laws. Marcos was considered a resident of Honolulu at the time. That is why the case was filed there, although his parole visa issued by the U.S. Immigration Bureau indicated that he was a guest of the American government. And then he died, and the four cases were consolidated into a class suit and filed against his estate. Although the media reports say it was a class suit of 10,000 victims, the counsels of the plaintiffs actually submitted to the court only 5,898 names, of which 2,710 were duplications and or lacked the consent of the individuals named when the final judgment was pronounced in January 1995. Nonetheless, the judge gave the counsels over 4 years extension to complete the names until 1999. There's no record of any increase in that number. Yesterday, the PCGG announced that the so-called hunt for the Marcos wealth may wind down within the year and the case is transferred to the Department of Justice. Let's be updated on the status of this agonizing claim for damages for our distinguished guest tonight, the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights herself, Ms. Etta Rosales.
Good evening.
Ma'am, last year some amount was obtained from an asset in the United States that was surrendered by one of the Marcos cronies. Were the claimants able to get any compensation from that amount?
Yeah, well, last year, if you remember, I was already chair of the Commission on Human Rights. We distributed $1,000 each to the claimants. There were about 7,000 claimants. I would just like to correct, there were 9,539 claimants, but in this case, we were able to distribute to 7,526 claimants because these were the ones who were able to reach the courts and then the lawyers. So, yeah, that was the first distribution from the class suit.
When can the Honolulu judgment of $1,964,5,859.90 successfully implemented against the Marcos estate here in the Philippines or anywhere in the world?
Yeah, syempre naman suntok sa buwan $9 billion, no? How can you really get that? But certainly, right now, there is an ongoing court hearing at the Makati Regional Trial Court where the lawyers of the claimants are trying to enforce the foreign judgment in Philippine courts. So, patapos na yan, and once you're able to do that, then you can use this foreign judgment in trying to make claims to properties of the Marcoses here in the Philippines.
Ma'am, the hunt has been going on for 26 years. What measures can be undertaken and by whom in order to finally settle the claims of the victims of human rights violations? And can the PCGG still sequester any future assets that may be discovered as belonging to the Marcos estate?
Of course, the PCGG can always sequester assets of the Marcoses which they think that are unlawful, unlawfully gained. But in the case of what the victims can do, I think that there's a possibility that, and this I am appealing to the government, I'm appealing to the President, and even to the PCGG, that there might be a possibility of some kind of agreement, a settlement between the victims of human rights violations and the Philippine government through the PCGG. Because right now there are two litigation cases. One is in Singapore, that's about $23 million, and the other one is in Arelma in New York. That's the Arelma case, which is about $35 million. Now, the funny thing is that the parties involved here, of course, are also the Marcoses, but I don't think the Marcoses are getting anywhere, even the Golden Buddha. The main contending parties are, one, the Philippine government, and two, the class suit, the claimants. And I see no reason why both parties cannot agree with each other and try to find out some kind of settlement. Because if you notice, Chair Andy Bautista has actually complained about the very expensive cost of litigation, especially abroad, in trying to pay the lawyers. Do you know that the past administration paid $14 million, 14 milyones na dolares, no, sa mga abogado in order to fight the victims of human rights violations. And pangit naman doon, right now that the government is very friendly and very supportive of the victims' claims, there's no reason why we can't just settle that. So that's one way we can do it. At the same time that PCGG can still continue running after the cronies. There are 200 pending cases in the Sandigan Bayan right now. And one thing that I know, which in fact we should run after, and this was quite a long time ago, you know, it has become final and executory, the tax case against the Marcos real estate has amounted to about 22 billion pesos. And this has been, it has reached the Supreme Court, and I understand that it's already final and executory since when I was still in the House of Representatives, yun na yun. Bakit hindi habulin yung mga ganon? Yung mga cronies ni Marcos. Marami itong mga kasong ito, they're pending in the Sandigan Bayan. You don't have to go abroad, but you can, you know, rest your case dito sa mismo sa Pilipinas.
Ma'am, actually also PCGG Chair Andres Bautista also said that the cost of recovery of the ill-gotten wealth is very prohibitive and the cost is very high. Another thing, is it also a stumbling block now that the Marcoses are also back in power here in the Philippines? Is that causing some difficulties in recovering some of this wealth?
You know, it should not. I mean, what are we trying to say? Are we now saying that just because you're in power and you're a high government position official, then you're above the law? I think that should not even be the case. You know, what we should do is to improve on our criminal justice system, improve on our, actually, the civil cases, no? Criminal and civil cases, but we should improve on our justice system so that whatever cases that we have should be pursued relentlessly. We should make sure that we've got strong evidence in order to win our case. But the fact that Bongbong is senator,
yes,
and then Imelda is congresswoman, yes, and then Aimee is governor, should not be reason for us to you know, hesitate in pushing the cases forward.
But we can't take away that there would be some public perception that might see this as a stumbling block.
Yeah, I suppose they would. But don't you think that what we should really do is to improve our criminal justice system and ensure that no matter that government officials are around and they might be affected, the point is we pursue our cases because this is for the public good, for the common good.
You actually mentioned a while ago that there are 200 pending cases in the Sandigan Bayan. How long do you think this will take from the start? As PC Bautista said, it's been 26 years already trying to actually recover the ill-gotten wealth, and now even some of the claimants are getting old.
Oh yeah, they're not just getting old, yes, they're dying.
Yes.
A lot of them have already died. No? So that's what's sad about it. We have two cases. You've got your class suit. It can be a settlement between government and the victims. That's one. No? That's Singapore and the Relma. Then we've got the compensation bill. The good news is that this has been approved and adopted on third reading already, both by the Senate and the House. All that they need to do is to meet in BICAM, no, bicameral conference. That can take only one day, and they can finally come out with a committee report, go back to their chambers, ratify it, and the consolidated report after ratification can be brought to Malacanang on the third day and can be signed into law. That will be historical, that will be a breakthrough, and that will be a model for the international community if we are able to do that as early as January.
Ma'am, on the part of Commission on Human Rights on your part, on your department. What is your department doing in helping in these cases for those who are affected by the human rights violations?
Well, with the compensation bill, we've been lobbying hard for that. I've been going to the Senate quite regularly. I've been going to the House of Representatives. I call up the senators and the members of the House to remind them that the compensation bill is long overdue, and this is a conditionality by the Swiss government that, the money that came to us should in fact go to, fair share should go to the victims of human rights violations. So that is how we are helping. And with the class suit, the CHR helped by way of distribution. We served as the distribution center. And hopefully, if there is any agreement, hopefully a settlement between the Philippine government and the victims of human rights violations, we in the CHR will be more than willing to do our share in helping in the distribution.
Now, distribution of the recovered wealth, would there be any conflict with President Aquino's Executive Order number 1, 12, and 12-A regarding the recovery of ill-gotten wealth to be turned over to the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program? Can the human rights violation victims also claim over the same assets?
Yes, of course. All that you need to do is to have the compensation bill, which I mentioned, ratified. There should be a bicameral committee that should meet between the Senate and the House, agree on the consolidated report, ratify it, bring it to Malacanang, and let Malacanang sign it into law. And that way, you will have the legal basis for getting a fair share. This is about 10 billion pesos. That should go to something like, thousands of claimants. And that is one way whereby, a fair share can now go to the victims of human rights violations. 164 billion pesos has already been collected by the PCGG, and the bulk of this has really gone to agrarian reform.
Non-compensation, are you confident that this will be passed? As we've seen in the past, it even took 14 years for the RH bill to be passed.
Yeah, I'm confident. It took 14 years for the RH bill to be passed, but it was passed into law. Isn't that lovely? So if the RH bill can do that, there's no reason why compensation bill cannot do the same thing. I'm confident because it's already third reading. Wala nang paglalabanan dyan eh. Wala nang mga arguments, amendments, etc. Mag-bicameral conference na lang sila at pwedeng lagdaan na yan. You can do that in 3 days' time. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I hope that the senators and the members of the House are listening to me in this effort. And once we are able to sign this into law, it's going to be historical. It's a feather in the cap of the President and this administration. And it's going to be parang watershed yan na pagbabago. In terms of reconciliation and healing, napakalaki. And it even will pay possibly for negotiations, peace talks between the Philippine government and the National Democratic Front, because a lot of those who are going to receive the compensation will be people who long were fighting the dictatorship and were also influenced by the National Democratic Front. Of course, matatanda na lahat yan.
Now, going back to the PCGG, if and when it is abolished, what can be expected from the Department of Justice once the cases and the claims are finally transferred to its office and the PCGG will wind up its work and close shop?
Well, of course, the Department of Justice can always take over the cases in settling, in resolving these cases. Now, definitely in the prosecution of these cases, definitely the DOJ can do that. And the sequestered properties can actually be brought to the Department of Finance so as to be able to collect the necessary revenue that is needed there. So that can be. I think that the only problem that is being looked into right now is that the DOJ is really swamped with a whole lot of cases and is very, very, very busy. So that the PCGG by itself should, I would suggest the PCGG should take on the celebrated cases, the most formidable cases, and zero in on that and focus on that until it feels that it can wind up already, and whatever yung mga butal-butal can be given to the DOJ.
Okay, on that note, ma'am, we wish you all the best in this long, winding saga, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was Chairperson Etta Rosales of the Commission on Human Rights. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, too.